So, beginning again, we now have a two-dimensional sketch which we can use as the basis for our three-dimensional geometry. At this point, the origin planes are a bit of an annoyance to me, so I'm going to turn them off using the eyeball function here. Let's zoom in using our middle mouse button. Just roll that in. And I'm going to look at the part from the side by clicking on the right edge of the view cube. There are many different ways for us to create geometry, and some of these you'll experiment with later, but I have purposely chosen one of the most simple of all of them, and it's called a pipe function. If you hold your mouse over any one of these functions long enough, you will get a small pop-up window that attempts to describe, using visuals and a few short sentences, what this tool will actually do. Clicking on the pipe function, I'll get a pop-up window similar to all the others that I've seen already, and it will be telling me through the blue highlighted area what it wants from me. It would like very much for me to give it a path, so let's just do that. And I've clicked on that back line of my sketch, and you can see this pipe will fill the entire space of that sketch that I've created. I really don't want the whole thing, and you'll see why later. So let's do change selection off and make use of the fact that we can get rid of that selection and do the X. And this time, instead of having the change select, I will have to select each and every segment separately. That's fine for me because this is exactly what I want. If I turn this slightly to look at it from the side, you can see there's two arrows. The one here governs the length along my path, which has a pipe, and the other will govern the size, the diameter of that path, assuming that I'm using a circular section. More on this later. It's a little bit difficult to see from this area, so you may have to twist just a tad. Using my picture in the background, I can see that it looks to be about 20 millimeters in diameter. So I'll do that. You'll also notice that I have the option of circular, square, or triangular sections. I don't know why you would use those in general, but we're going to stick with the circular here. And there's also this rather confusing distance which says 1. This is programmer speak. If I take the distance and pull it back a little bit, you'll see that I go to 0.47. If I go all the way to the end, I am at 0, and all the way to the end of my other end of my path, I'll be at 1. This is a percentage in programmer type speak, and it says from 0 to 100% or from 0 to 1. You can more easily probably use the snap points if you so desire at some other point in the future. But we need the whole thing, so we will be using a distance of 1. We can again make it hollow, but since this is a concept model and I don't really care about the cable that's going through, we're going to leave it solid. And of course, we are creating a new body. We have no other bodies with which to join this to, so this is our only option and we'll stick with it. So once we're happy with that, we can say OK. And you'll notice over on the left side of your screen, you have a new folder that says Bodies, and in that you will have Body 1. It may be difficult for you to see that you've actually created a three-dimensional geometry. So if you wish, you can turn off your canvas using the light bulb, and this will make it a little bit obvious, and you can move about and really prove to yourself that you have in fact created three-dimensional geometry here in space. If you lose yourself, don't forget, use the Fit key, then go look at the right, and you should be fine. You may wish to turn on the canvas again and zoom out a bit, or again, use the Fit button. And you'll notice also that our sketch has disappeared. This is a standard function in Fusion. You can turn it off if you so desire, but in general, Fusion will assume that if you've used a sketch once to create three-dimensional geometry, Fusion will assume that you do no longer wish to use that sketch for anything else. So it will turn it invisible in order to ease a bit of the clutter on your screen. In our particular case, we will be using the sketch again. So let's go over to the sketch folder, open it up, and turn it back on using the eyeball function. Let's concern ourselves now with the top of the lampshade. And this lampshade is circular in nature. And one of the commands that we have under Create is a so-called Revolve. This will revolve a profile about an axis or line. So let's select this, and it will ask us which profile we wish to revolve. This is why it's handy I have this central line that I created here. You can imagine that I planned this out in advance. And it really doesn't matter if I take this one or this one. They are the same, indeed. So if I take this one, I must then select which axis I would like to revolve about. To do this, I must select first on the command axis, and then select that axis here. You'll notice also that such axes here, reference geometry, could also work for this. I'll be rotating the axis around the entire circumference, so 360 degrees, or if you so wish, full. And right now, it is assuming that I wish to cut. And if you notice very carefully, look very carefully, you'll notice that there is a small piece of material that intersects with our lampshade, and this is why the system assumes you would wish to cut it. That is not actually the case. We wish to create a new body, and as such, I will select a new body. Be aware that there's also the option of joining, but this is not what we want in this particular case, and I'll explain why later, and you'll be able to see why. We'll create a new body at this time. Once I do this, I can say OK, and you'll notice that under our bodies folder, we now have two separate bodies, which are actually colliding with one another here, but they are indeed separate in my menu, and I can work with them separately, which will be handy. Now, for me personally, this background sketch, this background image, which we've been using for some time, is now becoming a bit onerous. It's always in the way, and it covers up what I need, and I actually have all the geometry I want. So for me personally, I like to turn it off right about now. I can turn it on later if I need it, and we will. But for now, it's a little bit cleaner for me to turn that canvas off, and I can keep the sketch for now as well. Now, if I look at my lampshade, it's not a very effective lampshade. There's really no space in here at all for a light bulb or for me to put my hand in there or anything else. Not very good. Now, there's a lot of ways we could have done this. We could have hollowed this out simply by making another profile with our sketch. Let me turn the bodies off and we'll look at that sketch again. And we could have just made a thin wall and rotated that. And that's perfectly acceptable. But in our case, we're going to use another function to do this. I'm going to turn off the sketch for now. Look at this from the underside. And we're going to use a function called the shell function, which is under modify, and it's called the shell function. This will create a thin-walled body, and it will remove any faces that I select. So if I want to remove this face, I can click on it, and then I can use this arrow to determine a wall thickness for my lampshade. I think a value of 4 millimeters is quite good, and this will make a hollow lampshade with all the walls being 4 millimeters thick, with the exception of the bottom one, which I selected, which will be removed. This is a function that is commonly used for plastic injection molded parts, sort of the things your kids have as toys or something like that. but we can use it here, and it's a nice way of working, and I thought you might like to do this. So if we set OK, now we have a lampshade that is closer to what we might expect. Now there's something else here that's interesting about this. I told you before we did not create these two bodies as joined bodies, because indeed if these were one body, I would have had a problem here with my shell command. My shell command would have made sure that the shell extended throughout the entire body. That means I would have had here a hollow back pipe, and that's not what I wanted. I would have even had a hole here. It is for this reason that I elected to keep these two bodies separate until this time. In order to join these bodies, I will use the function combine, which is rather poorly named because the combine function can actually be used to remove geometry as well. It's a Boolean function. So if I say combine, I can say this is my target body, and I would like this to be my tool body, and I would like to join these two. This will make out of the two bodies one. This is not entirely necessary because this is a concept model. We don't really care, but it does make the next little bit of work that we're going to do here a little bit more interesting and easier to do. Did you see this? This is a small gap. And these sort of things are sort of common for 3D CAD. This is not intentional. And if we look closely, I think we can all understand where this came from. We created a pipe that was based on this sketch. That sketch line that was the path for the pipe only went to this point here. And as a result, the pipe only goes to the end of the line. We actually needed to go a bit further. And of course, we could change our path to make the line a bit longer, but then we'd have intersections and perhaps a bit of material hanging over into the interior of the lampshade, and that's not very easy or nice. It can be done, but we have other options here. Fusion is a very robust CAD modeler. So if I zoom in carefully, and I'm going to show you another little feature as well. Sometimes it can be very hard to select these little faces and features that, might be in the middle of other things. So I'm not very talented with my mouse, but if I select and hold my mouse for 2 seconds in the general vicinity of the thing I would like to select, I get a multi-select menu. I can now let go of my left mouse button, and I can easily wander through these options. This is the face that I want? No, it is not. This, you can see a vague highlight. That's the one I want. And now I can select it. And if I watch from the side, I can now use a hidden feature inside of Fusion, the delete key. If I press the delete key, Fusion will automatically try to heal this body. Try to make it whole again. And in this particular case, it works. And it gives us just the geometry we wanted to have. This is a unique feature functionality inside of Fusion, and it's something to keep in mind. If you have little sliver faces or unwanted geometry like this, quite often you can just do a window select over them, press the delete key, and Fusion will solve it for you. Not always, but it is quite nice. Now, we're getting very close to having a finished lamp. So let's click the Fit button again. And in the next section, we'll be talking about how to take care of those legs and how we got those on.